but mostly it's her religiosity, it's her spirituality that she maintains through the social boycotts, through the wars, through the, the times of exile, and then into the days when they have victory, and then she's the teacher, and she's the one who actually continues to bring them into tradition. And lastly, I end on Ieasha. Why? Because she's my namesake. In addition to, we can't leave her out, as the beloved Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that Ieasha is like the meat to any dish. So we can mention all of these women, he's like, but she's the meat. And I'm from America, so for us, the meat is extremely important. And I only end on, we know that majority of our Islamic scholarship and Islamic law that we have today comes from the traditions of Ieasha. But lastly, and I'll close on this, the beloved Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, said, take half your deen from Ieasha, which means take half your way of life from her. Right? This is huge. This is huge. In the realms of imams and sheikhs and scholars, and where can we find women in the religious tradition who are carrying on that banner? It's huge. This is take half your deen from her. Right? Amazing. Amazing. Because this goes back to that balance, that yin-yang, the jamali and the jalali, and the establishment, right? The establishment of compassion and peace, and it having a very significant role if we have any hopes in being a balanced civilization and society. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allahu Akbar.
Excellent. Where you going,
Oh, where am I going?
This is about 10, 15 minutes, we'll do more questions and answers. But if you all heard what I heard, I mean, they represent the women that they talked about in spirit, knowledge, faith, and confidence. It was very motivating, very stimulating. Job well done. So, question.
Bravo.
So, you guys talked about how women have always been important, and that's personally, I believe that's very good for me. But one thing that I really don't understand is how, like from the time of the Prophet Muhammad, what happened that today it's like when you look at someone with the hijab, you feel like, oh, that person is suppressed and suppressed, and they're chauvinism. And when you look at someone without the hijab, like I don't wear the hijab, people think, oh, you're just, you're away from your religion. Like, how did those extremes come into the society? How did this happen?
We've been taking a few, so
Yeah.
this is.
Oh, right, you're right. This is my time. This is my question. Tag, I'm it. I think one of the biggest things, to be honest, there are two things that come to mind, and I'm just going to keep it really blunt. We begin to see, I'm trying to find a nice word to say this.
Safe space.
Right?
Let's be nice.
Trying to find a nice politically correct word. Let me say this. As our traditions, what happens is when the Islamic tradition began to spread to other lands and other regions, that, when you took religion and it met culture, it began to develop this mix between the two. And a lot of that happened because people began to think that sometimes conquerors had more to offer than those who were being conquered, right? So they began to more or less idealize, the oppressed oftentimes, idealize oppressors and conquerors. And so they begin to take on a lot of their ideology and their ways and begin to say, well, now this is the standard. Right? This is the standard of success. Might is right. This is the standard of power. In that, what we found is that they didn't necessarily value women in the same way, particularly women in education. And as long as women are not in the positions of power, right, or in the positions of teaching, you're going to find, sadly, where her rights, her liberties are marginalized, right? And this is just about about, struggle for power, struggle for, so where we find this imbalance, you find this struggle. So the hijab is a statement that scares people because, not everybody, but a lot of people, because it's a statement that says you are not my God. And I do not conform to what you say. I will not conform to your sexual ideology. I will not conform to your hypersexualization of the woman. I am not your object. And so you can go somewhere with that. Right? For many women. That it takes back, and in addition to it scares people because it says, in the age of secularism, like, God, do you have to be so outwardly religious? Like, can you, do you have to be religious in my face? Like, it reminds people of your commitment to what you believe in as opposed to your commitment and your conformity to what I believe in. Right? And so that makes people mad, to be honest with you. And so then we begin to, there's an old saying that says when the crow cannot obtain the grapes, he pronounces them sour, right? So it's like, doggone it, we can't control them, that way. So it's really because you're really oppressed, right? You wear that thing on your head because you're really oppressed. And you wear that thing on your head, it's really about male domination. And if you tell a lie long enough, people begin to believe it. But in reality, it was never that. It wasn't that from the beginning, and it's not that today. But it is also a political statement that says, I am committed to Islam as I understand it to be. And so that makes people nervous sometimes. Especially those who would rather you worship capitalism and other things as opposed to, I am your Lord, and stop believing in that unseen stuff. So that's one aspect. As it relates to women being, and then another thing happens. So women who feel empowered or women who feel encouraged and then decide they're going to wear hijab, then it becomes another moment of, well, you must not be as committed, to this. You must not, because you're not choosing to wear your scarf, so you must not be as committed. Or you must, this kind of another aspect of power comes in. And again, it's all about education. And that's, as an African American woman, when our history is in the books, it changes the spectrum from the beginning, as opposed to when someone else is telling us our story. And the same thing goes as it relates to being Muslim women, right? Whether that's and those are three serious identities, right? And so being American and being Muslim, being a woman, that's a lot of narratives that we've got to make sure that we're a part of telling our own story. So somebody else is not dictating what that looks like for us.
And just to kind of add on, I think what you really see, there's an organization in Cairo called Women in Memory Forum, and they actually take the verses from the very beginning and the hadiths from the very beginning, and they trace where it goes off. Where does this interpretation start to go sour? And it's a direct parallel. You see, as the Victorian era comes in, we go off in this direction. And so it actually traces, subhanAllah, like the interpretations, and it shows what was once in parentheses, for example. Like, I love the example they give on Adam and Eve. Like, what was once in parentheses, it used to say, well, Yahud and Nasara, and the Christians and the Jews say. Then it shows how the parentheses drop, and then how the whole sentence drops, and then how we absorb it into our tradition, and it's never part of our original tradition. So if you go back, there are scholars who are actually tracing exactly that question. Where does it start going off? And colonialism is one, consumerism is another. Again, like I said, the moment we decided we could own land was the moment we became separated and detached from Mother Earth, is the moment that we started a war against the feminine. And it's, you see it take and manifest in different forms, but I think colonial is one of the biggest links that they found when they did that research.
I'd also add, simpler general answer just as a context point is, you guys might have to help me with my religious history, but Moses goes up the mountain, right? He's got his people, we're all on board, yay. Goes up the mountain, comes back, what's happened? People have slid back, right? there's a natural tendency, and it goes back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, it's easy to forget, right? Maybe you're taught certain things, but human impulses want to distort it back to the easy way of things and preserving status quo. And status quo was patriarchy, and the status quo increasingly goes towards restoring towards a capitalist tradition because there are limited resources in the world. So if we've got to spread that around equally across all people, well, there is less for everybody. But if we could put away half of them somehow, that can change the narrative. I think the answer to your question also heavily depends on who you're talking to, where they are, frame of reference. There are absolutely countries that are using the hijab as a form of oppression by using it as a way to hide women. That's not the intent. It is a form of empowerment, right? But what a convenient way to use a little bit of truth and narrative and distort it to what you need it to do as maybe institutional leaders or whatever that want to change it, right? In the West, I think, I only started wearing hijab very recently, 2 years ago, and around that same time that we talked about earlier, a lot of changes. But I think here especially, hijab, meaning just headscarf or other articles of faith you're wearing, are a form of defiance and nonconformity. Whereas in other places, it's actually, if you don't wear it, would be taken as that, right? So it depends who you're asking, where they're located, very important context. But here, it is going against what, Manal talks about, that why do you have to be all up in our faces with your faith? Because it's there, right? It shows a boldness people don't know what to do with. And one of the reasons I called out the narrative of excluding women that don't cover is it's a way to divide and conquer, and I will not allow it. We need to make our spaces inclusive and welcoming, because whether you decide to or not one day to wear it, you're my sister in faith, and we need to work together, right? Because our strength cannot be divided that way.
And I just want to jump back in because, again, taking Muslim women into the larger context of women's issues. And I mean, like, the attempts to divide out women is constant in every society. I mean, think of the mommy wars. That was a way of hitting women, between people who stay at home and people who work. And it became like a huge issue in American society. And until now, like, you see all this divide between women, and the hijab and non-hijab is a way to divide us out. And women have to rise and say, we see that trick. We got you. We know your patriarchal tricks now, I do want to point out one thing that's a little bit of a tangent. I come through conflict resolution as an economist because I really, really worry when people talk about conflict only in the form of identity. And I really, truly believe one of the greatest lies sold to us is the lie of scarcity. Yes. We live in abundance. Yes. We live in abundance. It's a distribution issue. And we've been told over and over, scarcity, 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 and that's why people start to hoard. That's why identity emerges. But I just, when we were created, again, we were created in the divine, and we're part of that fabric, we were provided for, and we are provided for. And again, when I say climate change and environment and stuff, all of that is tied to control and trying to manipulate and try and think, but it's all these lies we've been sold. And it's become so innate in us that we continue to always assume that we work from a lens of scarcity. And I really want everyone, particularly women, always operate from a place of abundance. And that is part of faith.
I want to say this one thing that's very important, is that women, Muslim women actually, don't have a lock on hijab. And what I mean by that is that we don't ask that question when it comes to nuns. We don't ask that question when we're looking at, the statue of Mary. We don't ask that question when it comes to Orthodox Jews. It's just somehow when we're talking about Muslims that now we have that question. And so, I begin to question people's motives. When we're talking about dividing and conquering, and you have a reason why you want to single them out, right? And and a lot of it has to do with money.
It goes back to what I touched on way in the beginning of narratives. Narratives are very important in both, all the professions sort of that I've had. Narratives become, part of history, narratives as a political tool, and someone's trying to create a narrative on both sides of that, right? You've got to be careful and screen what narrative is what they're trying to ask me supporting.
And you gotta name it. We can't change it until we start naming it. So when people ask that question, you can ask them back, what is your intent with that question? When people, whether it's Muslim or not, why are you wearing hijab? What is your intent of that question? Are you trying to make me uncomfortable in my place of worship? You can ask back, because I think we're so ready to jump and answer that we forget we also have the right to question. So what is your intent when you keep raising this issue? What is your intent when this has become first and center? When the hijab, like I refuse to have the hijab. When people invite me to panels on hijab, I refuse. It is not my issue anymore.
I'm just not worried about, why are you always so worried about what's on women's heads?
Absolutely. Or how we dress.
I mean,
it's an
don't worry about the issue of like rape or something. Major things that are really hurting other people.
Yeah.
Like, work on that. Yes. I'm sorry.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
This has been very wonderful for me. In addition to having 2 daughters and 2 grandsons.